So already the noise is going on for Chris Eubank Jr. to parlay this victory over Conor Ben into something big and major. Canelo Alvarez is having his fight against William Skull this weekend, and he's been asked questions about fighting Chris Eubank Jr. I see a Sky Sports article talking about this exact same subject. Canelo Alvarez open to Chris Eubank Jr. fight as he targets UK debut. Canelo Alvarez and Chris Eubank Jr. have both underlined their interest in a potential showdown in the UK. Canelo is preparing to face William Skull in Saudi Arabia this weekend, while Eubank Jr. is coming off his victory over Conor Ben, who he could face again in a rematch later this year. Canelo Alvarez wants to add Chris Eubank Jr. to his list of British scalps and would be willing to come to the UK to do so. Turki Al-Sheikh told Sky Sports in February that the winner of Eubank Jr. against Conor Ben would be in line to secure a shot at Canelo in 2026. Eubank won Saturday's Tottenham showdown by unanimous decision to keep that dream alive, though is contracted to face Ben in a rematch later this year. Canelo is meanwhile gearing up to face William Skull in Saudi Arabia this weekend, but has opened the door to a meeting with Eubank. I have beaten 8 Brits so far, Canelo said in an interview with Ring magazine. Well, it's going to be 9 then. I want to fight in the UK, and I promise I will do it. I don't know exactly when yet, but I'm going to do it. Would people like to see me against Chris Eubank Jr.? Maybe that's the fight. That's a fight I'd consider, but we don't know what's going to happen. Canelo is meanwhile reportedly set to face undefeated pound-for-pound great Terence Crawford in Las Vegas in September in what is set to be one of the biggest fights in modern boxing history. The Mexican last fought a British opponent in 2023 when he beat John Ryder by unanimous decision, having also previously overcome Billy Joe Saunders, Callum Smith, Rocky Fielding, Liam Smith, Amir Khan, Ryan Rhodes, and Matthew Hatton. We will see what will happen, but I think a fight between me and Eubank is big, no? Canelo added. I think doing big fights is all I want. I want to enjoy everything I do now. I've accomplished everything in boxing. Maybe I beat more world champions, but I want to be in more big fights and big events. Speaking exclusively to Sky Sports for the first time since his win over Ben, Eubank insisted, watch this space, in regards to what might follow for him. Boxing is a very beautiful industry where anything can happen, he said. The possibilities are endless. If the rematch is meant to be, it will be. And if not, guess what? There are plenty of other amazing fights to be had and great things for me to achieve in the sport. Eubank reaffirmed his desire to take on Canelo in the near future in what he believes awaits as another sellout. That's another stadium filler. Absolutely, said Eubank Jr. Wembley, Tottenham, any one of the large football stadiums in the UK will be filled for a fight like that. He's an opponent I've been looking at for many years now, and fans would love to see that. So 100%, that's a name that's in my line of sight. And we will be doing whatever we can to secure that fight in the future. So, having this exciting, memorable bish bash bosh with Conor Ben, because that's all I can call it. It was a bish bash bosh. Has seemed to have brought light to things like Ben fighting for a world title at welterweight next, and Chris fighting Canelo Alvarez for status sometime in the near future. When this fight with Conor Ben and Chris Eubank Jr. was over, I was hearing references and comparisons to Mickey Ward versus Arturo Gatti. And I was like, that's rubbish. It was never anything like that. The only comparison was that it was 2 mid-level fighters, or especially 2 fighters that were not fighting for any type of belt or any type of status other than maybe progressing in their career and trying to climb higher in the division which they were in. The only comparison other than that is if Chris Eubank Jr. does get a fight with Canelo. And that compares because after Gatti won 2 of the 3 fights, A few fights later, he got himself a fight with Floyd Mayweather. So those Gatti and Ward fights lifted Gatti's celebrity. And Floyd was at that type of weight class. I'm sure it was super lightweight. I'm sure it was around super lightweight. I don't think it was lightweight. I think it was super lightweight. Don't quote me, but I believe it was super lightweight. Any which way, he got the fight with Floyd Mayweather, and Floyd schooled this guy. This wasn't Money Mayweather times. This was Pretty Boy Floyd times. This was the Floyd that was knocking man out. This was the Floyd that was putting shots together. Shot selection was perfection. Power shots were on point. Accuracy was immaculate. And he was knocking man out. And he stopped Arturo Gatti in the 6th round. After a barrage of just constant uppercuts, hooks, straights, everything was put in there. Body shots, head shots. But Arturo Gatti was such a tough cookie that he didn't want to go down. And eventually, I don't know if his corner threw in the towel or he was just beaten into submission, but I know he didn't get knocked out, but he got beaten to a point where the fight had to be stopped. Because the gulf in class was so evident that the fight couldn't go on. This is the comparison I'm going to make here. Because if Chris Eubank Jr. does get a fight with Canelo Alvarez, who I remember him expressing the want to fight in the UK, citing that he loves the UK audience and such like. UK boxing fans are brilliant and he would love to fight in the UK before his career ends. I believe that was when he was at middleweight, moving up to super middleweight. In between that type of time, he was making these expressions or these desires to fight in the UK. And I remember people talking about Chris at the time as well. And I think they even started some sort of negotiations, but don't quote me on that. But at the end of the day, the fight didn't happen and we're here at this point. If Chris Eubanks at any point in his career ever steps in the ring with Canelo Alvarez, he's going to get beaten to a pulp. And he's a tough cookie. He can tech lick. You understand? He can tech lick good old Chris Eubank Jr. And he won't have to be boiling himself down to middleweight. This will be at super middleweight in that weight class where I believe personally, I believe Chris Eubank's best performances have come at super middleweight. Even though he lost to George Groves, that was a very spirited effort from Chris Eubank Jr. And he suffered a few cuts and stuff which prevented him from being to his ultimate like he would have wanted to be, but he didn't get knocked out. Even though he lost the fight, it was a very spirited and entertaining fight which eventually caused George Groves to retire a few fights later, if not the fight later. He weakened George Groves, who then lost to Callum Smith the fight after and then retired straight after that. So we know Chris Eubanks is very hydrated and at the top of his powers, in my opinion, at 168. I remember when he knocked out Avni Yildirim at 168. That was one of the best performances I've seen from Chris Eubank Jr. He went in there physical and battered Avni Yildirim to a pulp. I think it was 3 rounds. Knocked him out in the 3rd round. Very good display, and that is the best I've seen him in a fight. So it would be good to see him up there against Canelo. To me, I think it would be a very exciting fight, but it would be a very exciting fight where Chris Eubank Jr. will go out on his shield, but definitely he will be going out because Canelo will just show him the levels and batter this guy to a pulp. That's my opinion, and I'm saying that from now. So, yes, this was a good fight for Chris and Conor, and these are the noises and these are the suggestions that are coming from this fight where he can fight guys like Canelo Alvarez. I don't think Chris Eubank Jr. is trying to fight for any title at middleweight. Definitely not, because he's just not a middleweight anymore. We saw this in his last fight. So he should be going up to super middleweight if he's going to continue fighting. And for me, he should not have the rematch at 160. He should dictate the terms for the rematch if there is a rematch. Conor Benn should actually not worry about the rematch and go back down to the weight class where he's supposed to be campaigning at, which is welterweight, which is another story in itself because that's a whole different thing, which we will talk about in another video. But Chris Eubank Jr. against. Canelo Alvarez is starting to make noise again, and we will see what happens with that fight, if by any chance it unfolds this time next year. And with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video.